Hello, welcome. Welcome to the 2022 Congressional Hackathon. This is our fourth in 11 years. We're really excited to host all of you here. We expect many more people to join us throughout the day. It's great to get the gang back together. I see a lot of faces from previous hackathons over the years. A great community. I think that's one of the most important things about this event is the community, people that really care about the institution of Congress, people that really care about the minutia of technical goings-on inside Congress and how we can make things better in the evolving world. So we're thrilled to be here. My name is Steve Dwyer. I am Senior Advisor from the Majority Leader of the House of Representatives, Mr. Steny Hoyer, who's walking down the aisle right now. And I am very pleased to have been one of the organizers, along with Chris Bien from Leader McCarthy's team, who's been one of my great partners. So thank you, Chris. You'll see Chris a little bit on stage. And so, yeah, this is a great event. I sent out the rough run of show a little bit yesterday. We are live streaming for the first time at the Hackathon, so there's people online watching. And without further ado, I just want to introduce my boss, who I've worked for a long time, somebody who really cares and dedicated his life to the institution of Congress. And the current Majority Leader, Steny Hoyer. Please come on up here and give remarks.
Steve leaves his computer up here, so I got to move it because I work with paper. This big hackathon leader works with paper. What can I tell you? I'm a little hoarse, but I want to welcome all of you here. Steve Dwyer is an extraordinary resource, not only for my office, but for the Congress of the United States, particularly the House of Representatives. Steve has been with me. How many years have you been with me, Steve? 19 years. He can't get rid of me. He keeps hoping maybe I'll go away. I also see, Kevin, you want to come in and sit down? Sure. Kevin McCarthy, my partner in this event, which for some years, from California, the minority leader who deludes himself he's going to be the majority leader next year. Excuse me, the speaker. That's right. My view is limited, I guess, Kevin, but good to be with you. I want to welcome all of you to the Capitol for our fourth Congressional Hackathon. It's wonderful to meet in person once again after 2 years of virtual events. Now, in a hackathon forum, we ought not to be too concerned, I suppose, about virtual, because many of us have become experts at virtual communications. And what an amazing technology. It has allowed us, notwithstanding the fact we couldn't come together personally, to stay in touch. And on Zoom, I think it's so realistic because you can respond, and assuming somebody didn't put you on mute. I always get upset when the central authority puts me on mute. But you can respond, you see the facial, you see the actions, and it really is the next best thing. But the best thing is in person, but it's a wonderful technology. Your collaboration at this hackathon makes it one of our most important avenues for promoting innovation, modernizing Congress, and making the legislative branch more accessible, transparent, and efficient. And that really is the objective, to make our democracy more transparent and more accessible to the American people, whose Congress, of course, it is. Your contributions today will transform the digital operations of Congress for years to come. The event has a history of generating change. This is not just meeting and talking to one another, it is making change and making progress. In 2011, as a result of the first hackathon, Congress opened its databases so that anyone could access information about the members who represent them, as well as the bills, amendments, reports, and votes that impact their districts, their state, and their country. As a result of the 2015 hackathon, Congress modernized its committee hearings by creating a central calendar and a repository of video streams, testimony, and documents. Critically, hackathon participants also recommended allowing committee witnesses to testify virtually. There's been some controversy about that, but very frankly, it has facilitated getting witnesses who are not able to travel to Washington, D.C., and who may be overseas. You can join her. It was a very good, and I think that's something that we need to keep. We may want to make it more limited, but personally, and there are differences of opinion on that because all of us believe, Mr. McCarthy, myself, the Speaker, all agree that really is no substitute for in-person. But when you can facilitate getting testimony or presence that otherwise is not possible, then I think it's a very, very good alternative. Another major hackathon success was the creation of a new web form for constituents to open casework inquiries. I don't know how many of you have experienced that or understand that, but and use an electronic signature to give consent for the sharing of their information for the purposes of federal casework. That personal signature really interrupted the time frame of responding to a constituent's need. Now we can do that in real time. Before this change, whenever a constituent needed a member's help with the federal agency, he or she had to sign the privacy release physically and then scan or fax it back to the member's office. This was a source, I know, of frustration for many, for congressional staff and the general public, and it demonstrated our need to adapt to a digital world. I'm proud that my office was the first to implement this solution and that more than half of the members are using it today. So over 220 members are using it. These events produce a real change, and I'm glad that our hackathons are truly bipartisan. This is not about politics. This is about how we can better serve the American people and how they better can access their representatives and the business of the people of the country. I want to thank my co-host, as I've already done, but I want to do it again, Republican Leader McCarthy. He and I are perceived correctly as advocates of our two positions in our parties, but we also understand that having a Congress that runs effectively, efficiently, transparently, and accessibly is in the best interest of everybody and every American. I want to thank also co-host Steve Dwyer, who's done such a great job. While we come from opposite sides of the aisle, the leader and I, we both want to ensure that Congress continues to adapt and modernize to serve the American people in our digitally connected world. Today, America's talented digital innovators will engage with members, staff, and advocates to generate more brilliant ideas. And you can see how many of your ideas have been adopted and are in use right now. As Majority Leader, I've been proud to help bring the Democratic Caucus up to date with the latest technology so we can better deliver results for our constituents. My office oversees an intensive digital training program, the Digital Academy, which has graduated over 150 staff members. We also manage DEMCOM, our caucus's official intranet, which we've expanded to serve Senate Democratic staff as well. The Republicans have a similar capability. With over 10,000 resumes in DEMCOM's resume bank, we are using this tool to promote greater diversity and excellence in our hiring. My office continues to work on improving and updating our popular Dome Watch app. If you don't have our Dome Watch app, Steve Dwyer developed it. I bet some Republicans are using it as well, and obviously we could use something that they have developed to make better access of what information in real time, what's happening now. The 4.0 version that we launched last November added a floor timeline function as well as committee videos. We also are close to announcing a 2.0 version of our Dome Directory app, which helps users recognize members of Congress. That may be good news, Kevin, and bad news, I'm not sure, but my senior advisor, whom I've talked to about a lot, will give you a preview of Dome Directory 2.0 at some point in time today. At our last hackathon in 2017, I recognized Leader McCarthy's partnership in passing the bipartisan Modernizing Government Technology Act, which was successfully enacted into law. 5 years later, The Technology Modernization Fund that law created has received over $1 billion to upgrade legacy executive branch systems to save money, to reduce cyber attacks, and to make them more effective. That is one example of us working across the aisle on these issues. Another major example since our last hackathon is the great work of the Select Committee on Modernization. I've given serious attention to the operations of it has given serious attention to the operations of Congress, including our use of technology. I want to commend Derek Kilmer and the ranking member who worked together collaboratively. I'm sorry, who was it? Timmons, Congressman Timmons, who worked together in a very, I've met with both of them. I know Kevin has done that as well. And it really was a display of how we can work together to improve our lives, our constituents' access, and the product. I understand all of you will receive an update from the Select Committee later in this program. Every change we consider, either through the Modernization Committee or here at the Hackathon, is intended, as I've said over and over, to help Congress become more accessible and more transparent. New technologies offer an unprecedented window into the internal workings of Congress and help transform the legislative process by bringing more Americans inside the room. I don't know how many of you have seen Hamilton. Remember, he says, I want to be in the room where it's happening. I want to be in the room where it's happening. What this technology does is allow every citizen to be in the room, not physically, but virtually in the room where it's happening. I am glad that Lira McCarthy and I are working together to drive this transformation in a bipartisan basis. Once again, I join and welcome you to the Capitol. I look forward to hearing your ideas on how to improve this great institution. We call it the People's House. Very frankly, the Senate was set up as the representatives of the states, representatives of the state legislatures. Now, I know they're directly elected now, but the founders set up the House to be the people's house, the people's voice, to listen to them. And every 2 years, have to go back to them and say, this is what I've done. Do you want me to keep doing it? Do you have new ideas? Where should we go as a country? The People's House. And now it's my pleasure to introduce my very dear friend and colleague with whom I disagree a lot of times, but who agrees with me that making this institution better is a joint responsibility and opportunity for the leaders of the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. And the gentleman from California, Kevin McCarthy.
I do want to thank Stenny. Regardless of what people see on the outside, Stenny and I are actually close personal friends. We can disagree and not be disagreeable. The rest of the nation should look at that as well. But one place that we firmly agree upon is right here. We've been doing this for quite a few years. And Stenny talked about a lot of things, but I want to put it just in perspective. Technology does so many good things. It's a disruptor. It brings, no matter what, more efficiency, more accountability, the data, but it provides a greater service to people, and it gives them freedom. But there's also vulnerabilities with it that we see. What the hackathon should do is look at both of those. Are there vulnerabilities to our government? Help us solve those, and we don't think that way. But also from a standpoint, somebody shouldn't have to come to Washington to deal with an agency. Let me give you one example, which frustrates me. When I first came, everybody wants to make sure we treat our veterans right. I get here and I hear about veterans that can't get an appointment to the VA, to their local VA, and they have to call by the phone. Then I sit and watch somebody take a nap, get an Uber, rate the driver rates them. Why couldn't we just create an app for that? Could make an appointment. Here's all my medical records. I could rate my doctor. We could grab that data. Government collects so much data too, but they make it so hard for the public to find it. What if we made it a one-stop place where people could find all the data they wanted? What if we made it, it's just like the e-signature, so if you understood that, if you're a member of Congress and a constituent calls you and they're in a panic because they've tried everything else, but they come to you finally, maybe it's the IRS or something else, you know what we tell them? Can you come down to the office and sign a form so I can call on your behalf? Well, I live an hour away. Okay, I'll drop it in the mail today. You get it, fill it out, send it back to me, and when I get it, I'll call that week later. But at the same time, there's a knock at the door and they've got a package from UPS and they signed for it. I mean, we shouldn't be behind, we should be leading in that nature. And that's what I look to the hackathon to do. You can make us more accountable, but you can make us more accessible. And it doesn't have to go along any party lines. This is our government, of the people, by the people. But how do we provide and break through and get that all down? Because government is usually the last thing to reform. Anything in the private sector is going to have to adapt and perform earlier. I mean, when you think about it, think about how big and powerful Amazon is. But Amazon started just selling books. They're going to mail it to you. They're competing with a bookstore. But Amazon now can sell you and get you anything, right? From groceries on in, and they get you sometimes in 24 hours, you never leave, and it lets you look at different prices. But you know what could have been Amazon, which was what I would say the government for, was Sears and Roebuck. They had all these locations. They sold you from a house to pants. They had catalogs that went everywhere, but they just didn't keep up in time. We should have that same thought. How can we constantly improve? But at the same time you're improving us, look for the vulnerabilities. Because if we're a government of the people, by the people, it's a threat if we have openings. Now, the one other thing I want to do, we've done a lot of great successes here. We want to continue to build this. We want to continue to go. If you are into NFTs, we have one here. Now, keep going. It's going to come here in a minute, I promise you. I see it on the side there. It's the number 2. Oh, do I need to do it here?
My apologies, sir.
Oh. All right. All you have to do, if you have a wallet, email us at nft@mail.house.gov and we'll send you one. Now, this won't be the very first NFT for Congress. I already did that one with a ticket earlier. But you want to be on the forefront, do you not? It'll be the first hackathon NFT. You can go through, and we all sit back later in life and say where we were at this moment in time of how you made government so much better, all right? Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leader McCarthy. So without further ado, we're going to keep on going. We have 2 real quick sort of keynotes in addition to our host speaking. The first, I have the pleasure of introducing somebody who is no stranger to hackathons. Somebody who, sorry, one second. Somebody who was the driving force absolutely behind the very first hackathon in 2011, and then was the partner on Hackathon 2 as well. Somebody who is in leadership for many years, was a great partner of mine personally. Having someone, an ally on the other side of the aisle was huge. And he worked for both Mr. Cantor and Mr. McCarthy in their leadership roles. He since then went on to the White House and continued to do great things for civic tech in particular. So without further ado, our friend, Matt Lira.
Hey everybody, it's fantastic to be here. I'm really excited to see this crowd and to just feel the energy again on so many different levels, given the journey we've all been on. Throughout history, there have been times that have challenged us. There have been times that have tested us and caused people to look at one another with a wary eye. And in those times, artists, engineers, activists, they come together and they imagine a better future. And it's in that spirit that we're, I think, coming together today. Even in challenging times, this is when we can come together as, again, those creators and passionate activists and try to build a new renaissance. It's the way it's always been done throughout history. So everyone in this room, I think you're continuing that great spirit that you can look back at countless examples throughout history of being a part of moving forward, imagining a better future, and causing each of us to move our gaze a little bit from the day-to-day battles that we can all get into, the day-to-day passionate debates that you always have in a functioning, passionate democracy, and to take a moment and to look up and to imagine what's possible. And so I think it's time. It's time for us as a community of people of goodwill to look up once again and to imagine what's possible in this incredible institution, the United States Congress. Someone that's inspired me in that spirit is the person I have the privilege to introduce, albeit virtually. A good friend of mine who I know has inspired me and inspired many people in this room, the first Chief Technology Officer of the United States, Aneesh Chopra. And now I'll put my technical skills to the test. Let's see if we can pull it up. I'll go full Steve. Oh, there it is. Ladies and gentlemen, Aneesh.
Well, it's a real honor to join you, even if just virtually, to the 4th Congressional Hackathon. I am grateful for the opportunity to celebrate what I hope is the best of American spirit, the idea that people with talents wide and diverse throughout our society can come together to put their talents to its highest and best use. For technologists, entrepreneurs, and innovators, the opportunity to make our democracy stronger, to improve our congressional branch of service, as we've done with the executive branch, is an incredible opportunity. To give you some history and context, I have found throughout my public sector career, first in Virginia as Secretary of Technology and then in the Obama administration as CTO, that while we may have significant disagreements about the future of our country, depending on which side of the aisle you're on, there is a universal agreement that we all want to tap into the expertise of the American people to solve problems. This is one of those few areas where we set aside ideological differences and work together towards the common goal. What's impressive about this gathering is that you didn't come here because of a government contract or because there was a regulation that compelled you to do so. You're here because you have that spirit of service that wants you to come and participate and contribute to the greater good. That is the heart of the story of civic technologists in the American economy. You represent the best of us. The opportunity to put your talents together, even if in the short period of time of the hackathon, to demonstrate the art of the possible, or maybe, if you're so inspired, to think of a more proper tour of duty, either within the Congress or to think more generally about public service. We need you. At a time when technology, data, and innovation has had incredible change in our private lives, this is the moment to have that change channeled towards our collective lives. You can do a great deal of good this week. Come together, celebrate your wins, and hopefully take a little bit of inspiration to make a difference over the medium to long term of your life. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to say a few words, and I wish I was there with you in person. Have a great day.
Even though it's virtual, we can clap. Okay, so I'm just going to talk through a little bit of logistics of the next thing we're going to do. Next is exciting. It's called our lightning round. This is a very unique event here on Capitol Hill. It's one of the very few times where we allow the participants to come up on stage. Most events on Capitol Hill, you get in your chair and you just listen. You don't have an opportunity to participate, to contribute, to brainstorm. We're going to have a lot of that going on later with our breakout groups, but we also, just so everyone knows, the process with this was totally open. We just messaged everyone that had RSVP'd 2 weeks ago. At that time, it was, I think, 130 people, and we said, hey, do you have an idea that's worth pitching on stage? We don't want it to be a mere commercial pitch, but we want it to be relevant to Congress. We want it to directly use either congressional data or technology. And we got a lot of great ideas from all of you, which I think is awesome. And it's another, back to the theme of the community of Congress. And so I'm pleased to say we have more than we did last time. We're going to keep it super quick, 3 minutes per pitch, only 3 slides max, although some people are doing a live demo of different tools or projects that they're working on directly related to Congress and technology. We're trying to get a timer going. If not, we might just have a manual piece of paper to stick up that says time's up when 3 minutes is up. Without further ado, Daniel Schumann is our first presenter. Please come on up here. Yeah, and let's go ahead and clap. Let's clap each presenter. And also, I forgot to mention at the top, in the past, we've had a hashtag for this event. It's been Hack We Trust. How about Hack We Trust 22? If anyone wants to tweet. All right, Daniel, so bear with us. We've got a whole lot of slides up here for 16 quick pitches and some live demos. Come on over, Daniel.
The terrible thing about live demos, of course, is that they can always break. So we will see if this actually works. Great. We'll get this started. So it's good to be back, huh? This is fun. So for those who don't know me, I'm Daniel Schumann. I'm the policy director with the Demand Progress Education Fund. What I want to talk about is legislation. Legislation is about moving ideas into law. Legislative information websites should be built around tracking ideas as they move in Congress through bills, hearings, report language, and expert analysis. It can take a long time for an idea to become a legal requirement. Congress considers ideas from many different angles and over many years. Congress needs a map of the conversations around legislative ideas because that provides crucial insight into what very smart people think about it. A map can also provide a reality check on whether there is a path for an idea to become a law. This is why we built BillMap. BillMap tracks the ideas embedded in a draft law and provides a map to every place the idea has been considered by Congress, whether recently in the distant past. So what we pulled up here is the infrastructure bill. It's a little bit ugly, but it works. And working is good, right? So what you see here, the related bills in the same Congress, are all of the bills that were pulled into this legislation. So you can see where all the different ideas came from. And if you hover over it, it tells you what their sources are. It tells you who the key sponsors are on the right side. As you go down, there's more detail, so you can see related bills from this Congress, from all Congresses. You can see where every section in this bill was reflected in other legislation, which is very helpful, so you can see sort of where the ideas come from. You can look at sponsors, not just of this bill, but of the related bills, so you can see who the co-sponsors are that you need, and looking at overall Congresses. So you can also see co-sponsors that you've had in the past who may not be currently sponsoring it. And finally, we have a section here on understanding the context, where we pull together the data that we have all worked so hard to make publicly available. We've got CRS reports, where we scan through the CRS reports to find the mention of the bill. Statements of administration policy. This is we've pulled down all the statements of administration policy for the last 10 or 12 years. All relevant press statements. This comes from the hard work of Derek Bolus at ProPublica. I don't think our CBO scores is working at the moment, but if it were, this would have the relevant CBO score and relevant committee documents. The thing is, when we find these bills, we can see whether the legislation was drafted differently at different times, who co-sponsored it, how it was considered by the committees of jurisdiction, press releases, what CRS had to say, what the administration had to say, who voted for and against it, or more. Our website, BillMap, is a proof of concept. It works, mostly. You can use it now to track the path of legislative ideas and find related bills. We're working on making sure the display works properly, and we're pleased to announce that we are mostly finished with a public API that will allow you to put in the name of any bill in the last 10 or 12 years, and it will spit back out all of the related legislation to that. Our code is available online. Check it out at billmap.govtrack.us. Thank you so much.
That was great, Daniel. I personally have been on a policy team in a congressional office where we get a huge bill dropped on us, and we are told what smaller bills are in it. And that is a huge pain and difficult, and this is an ambitious project that conquers that. Next up, Jonathan. I'm only going to say the person's name. Part of that is because we're trying to not keep this commercial pitches, as the presenters can introduce themselves if they want. But Jonathan, let me pull up your...
All right, good afternoon. I'm Jonathan Rayner. For those of you who don't know me, I'm currently Senior Policy Advisor for Anthony Brown. I came to the Hill from the defense industry. I did R&D out in the middle of the desert some places for about 10 years before I decided this was more fun than blowing things up. When I came over the Hill, I could tell Anthony Brown from Sherrod Brown, but that's probably about it. I didn't have the depth or knowledge of the fortune that everybody else in this room did who grew up in the institution and knew member 432 from member 276. When I came in, my chief all of a sudden would start asking me questions like, who's on this bill? Are they Democrats? Are they New Dems? Are they CBC members? And I, had a blank stare back because I didn't have that knowledge. I quickly realized, though, that if I was going to survive here, I had to use the tool set that I did have, which was engineering and technology, and figure out how to apply it here. So I wrote a plugin for Congress.gov, which would give me all this information immediately when I would pull it up. It's free. It's publicly available. You can go download it today. I've used it for the last 5 years while I've been here. And it breaks down the different members that you have. So if you pull up a bill, you can see, are there CPC members on it? Are there Freedom Caucus? This one is the infamous Big Cat Public Safety Act. And you can see that, the CPC's about 90%. There's 10% that hasn't gone on board with it yet. But Freedom Caucus, really, really not in favor of this procedure for some reason. So with that, there's also other things that come along with it for free. On each one of these, if you hover over a member and you click on them, I've since extended this out to understand how does each member not only what partisanship do they come from their district or how they legislate overall, but on each individual issue. How do you find the member who might be very conservative on 12 issues, but on that 13th, the one that you're looking for, they're actually in the center, so you could build partners with them. Let's see what else. The other thing that currently it does is if you've got, let's see, where's it at? So it also has a find feature, right? So that's kind of like the upfront, where like if you just want to know how a bill is and assess it, that's there. Also, like I said, like if you want to know who was, let's suppose, the most potential bipartisan, I've lost it. I'm a Windows Linux guy.
Yeah.
Thank you. So you can come down here and select Foreign Affairs. I can. And you can drag across and see who are the most potentially bipartisan on that issue. Like I said, this is freely available. You can download it. I've got a couple of different QR codes I'll leave on the back for anyone who wants to use it. It's been a great boon to me during my time here in Congress to figure out who I can work with and so forth. And hopefully it's useful to everyone else as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Jonathan. I love that example. I think it's so cool to have an engineer as a congressional staffer. That's rare, and it's so impressive. Next up, Lars.
Yeah, hopefully the data loads. Let's just do a nice refresh first. Oh, and the data's not loading. Strange. It works on my phone.
Okay.
Well, that's unfortunate. Technical issues happen to everyone. Do you have a different browser?
We have Safari.
Let's try Safari. Sorry.
I can't even get out of the full screen.
And of course, it doesn't work on both browsers. Oh well, have to fix JavaScript.
Want to just talk through the idea
Yeah.
though and tell everyone about this?
So the idea is simple. You've all seen before how the Senate does not have a central committee website for their committee hearings. So, and GPO has quite a bit of the information, but it's a bit behind. Plus, they don't have some of it where you might be interested in. So I decided to go try and solve that problem. So through scraping all the different Senate committees, I built a master database of all the Senate committee hearings and then built a website for them so to make it possible for people to actually see when the committee happened, how to search for it. So instead of having to crawl for I think there's too many logistics to get to work on over here, but thank you, Ashwin, for pointing out it does work on people's computers and that this is an incident that I'll need to resolve later on. But yeah, there are a couple of interesting features you might find helpful. For example, on the page for witnesses, you not only can go search for all witnesses, how many times they spoke, you can also see all of their testimonies, because you can on GPO, for example, see individual testimonies. It's a big file. But now you can see everybody's little transcripts they submit instead of having to jump between how many ever committees they appeared on. Or with transcripts, I recently added a feature for full text search of a transcripts to make it possible for somebody to actually search the text of a transcript along with just looking at individual transcripts, because as everybody knows, that's also not on GPO. If it was working, I would have happily shown going through the website, going through somebody, but what can you do?
Thank you, Lars. Sorry about that. Bear with us, everyone. Next, Yuri Beckelman, who is another good hackathon alumni, has been a group leader a couple times for us, and his new role is staff director of the aforementioned Modernization Committee. Oh, yeah.
There we go. Okay. Well, thank you all. My name's Yuri Beckelman. I'm with the Modernization Committee. Really proud to be in front of you all today. So the Modernization Committee, also known as ModCom, is basically just an extended hackathon, except we're included in the House rules. We have no legislative authority, and we have no oversight authority. Instead, we make recommendations, and to develop these recommendations, you can think of our work as a design thinking exercise. We start our work by hearing from and empathizing with our customers, either through a member day, a listening session, or they can even share their complaints with us by leaving a suggestion in the box we have in front of our office. This is a real thing. You can come by and see it if you'd like. As we scope our hearings, we define the problems we hope to address. We find the experts who know how the systems that are currently in place work, and our committee members work together on developing potential solutions. What makes us a bit different than other select committees that also operate this way is that we prototype and implement as we go. So this is a great quote from one of our partners, Dr. Walter Olasek. He's an analyst at CRS. He says the committee might very well be the premier example of a reform committee during its existence that works with appropriate House office officials responsible for implementing the panel's recommendations. This is really just an exciting kind of view of how we do our work. Since being constituted in 2019, ModCom has passed 142 recommendations in the areas of improving staff capacity and technology, and systems modernization, incentivizing civility and collaboration, making Congress more transparent and accessible, and in numerous other areas that make the House better able to serve the American people. Over 1/3 of our recommendations are fully implemented or nearing implementation. Approximately 2/3 of our recommendations are on a path to implementation. And just in case you're wondering, we have nearly a dozen more hearings before we end the year. We plan on having at least 2 more rounds of votes so that we can wrap it up really strong before, as the chairman likes to say, our committee turns into a pumpkin and we go away. I also want to make an important point here and a plug here. We're just coming up with the ideas. If it wasn't for our really wonderful partners at the CAO, the Architect of the Capitol, the Clerk's Office, House Leadership Offices, House Admin Committee, committee chairs, and anyone else who's been on this side of really working on implementation, none of this would be a reality. So they deserve a round of applause. And here is this big, beautiful list of our 30 things that have been fully implemented. And I would love to just go through all of them, but they are 30, and this is a quick pitch, and I'm not the micro machines guy. So I'll just touch on a few that I think you all might be most excited to hear about. Starting off, the House is a notoriously difficult place to work. So we passed a few recommendations to improve manager training, to standardize onboarding for staff. And at this point, I'd like to give a big shout out to the Staff Academy, who's really shook up how we do training on the Hill. Definitely deserve a round of applause. We recommended creating an HR hub, which is an internal web portal with best practices, cheat sheets, guides, and FAQs for managers. And we passed a recommendation that we should be investing in senior managers and highly specialized technical talent by delinking staff pay caps from member pay. These were really important steps. And here's another really poorly kept secret, right? The House struggles with adopting new technology. I don't know if you all know that. There are a lot of reasons for it. It includes tradition, software not playing well with those traditions, our small market size, difficulty getting offices to adopt new tech, and for some strange reason, our love affair with paper and wet signatures signed by blue pens. For those who don't know, the reason why we sign blue pens is because old photocopiers used to only photocopy in black and white so you could tell what was an original and what wasn't. It's just a legacy. It doesn't need to exist anymore. So we made a couple of recommendations in the space. My favorite one in here, I gotta give a shout out to Ken, is House Digital Services, right? This is a new division of technologists set up similar to the US Digital Service. They'll build bespoke software solutions for the House. Really impressive. They're gearing up right now. Pay attention to the work that they're doing. It matters. I also want to take a quick moment to give a shout out to Seamus Kraft, who was a real legend in the modernization space. He's been championing this idea for years. It was a good idea then, and a good idea plus timing becomes a great idea, and so now it exists. We're really happy about it. We also started to ask for a prioritization of teleworking tools like Microsoft Teams, Zoom, and OneDrive, which there's that story about a member of Congress who still has a flip phone and has no idea how to send an email. Let me tell you what, they know how to use Teams, Zoom, and WebEx. It's the most amazing thing. And we also did a recommendation to make permanent, allowing offices to not have to physically walk a copy of the bill to the House floor for introduction. You can now email it in. These are small things, but they are important. And I would say that having been here since 2006, and I think Steve would agree with me, this has been the fastest pace of modernization this institution has seen in my lifetime. And it came because of a lot of groundwork that was put in place that led up to the need to make it happen in a short amount of time. So I'm just blown away by how well we've really stepped up. And there is an appetite for it and a hunger for it, and it's continuing on. And then the last one I just want to touch really quickly, what we're probably most well known for is congressionally directed for spending, now known as community funding projects. Members of Congress have a direct connection to their districts and have been elected to set federal priorities. Our recommendation included creating new safeguards, expanding transparency, and ensuring that funding only went to government and nonprofit recipients. There is a bunch more on here, and what I'm really excited about is if every week we're going to start seeing more and more of these recommendations put into place, and it's really exciting. Follow along with our work. If I had more slides, I would put up our Twitter handle for you to follow along, but it's at Modernize CMTE, like an abbreviated committee. So follow along, and with that, just thank you all so much for coming out today.
Thanks so much, Yuri. So exciting all that the ModCom has done. Next, Sean is coming up.
Hey, hi everybody. I'm Sean Modi. I'm a designer and a technologist. Design is an underutilized expertise in the government, and design is more than just aesthetics. It's the entire user experience. Put simply, design is a methodology for problem solving that puts the user first. In the private sector and abroad, the greatest, most innovative organizations in America prioritize design from the beginning. But in the government, it's an afterthought. Why? Because designers all too often don't have a seat at the table. Design is iterative. Design is cost efficient. Design is more than aesthetics. It's more than graphics. It's how easy it is to use a product or service. It's how it works the first time. It's how it works the 1,000th time. It's how it works when you're working with your team or by yourself. We've all experienced well-designed products that make us feel valued, respected, and empowered. That is how everyone should feel when they interact with the United States Congress. Anyone with experience on Capitol Hill knows there's no shortage of passion to make a difference, no shortage of ideas for solutions, yet oftentimes the public feels that their voice, their concerns, are not breaking through. So I believe Congress needs more design expertise to improve day-to-day operations and in the creation and implementation of policy. So what does that look like? Today I'm proposing the creation of American Civic Design Labs. It integrates the best ideas of artists, engineers, designers, executives, and hey, even lawyers into elegant products and services. The collaboration we're having at today's hackathon should be a standard feature of the US government. Each branch of the government should have their own design lab. The White House, judicial branch, and one right here at the Capitol. As the legislative branch is the closest to the people, we have the opportunity to strengthen the public's relationship with government. And there's historical precedent for this. The only designer to be on the cover of Time magazine, Raymond Loewy, was hired by John F. Kennedy to design Air Force One. So when Air Force One lands in a foreign land, the world knows America is here. Richard Nixon established the federal design standards that ended up setting standards for how the NASA logo is displayed on rockets, or how the logo of the National Park Service is presented to campsite visitors. And going back to my grandfather's era, the Solarium project by Eisenhower, which brought together scientists, technologists, policymakers to respond to Soviet aggression. So how would a design lab work? One, it's a collaborative environment. It's where staffers, members from
MSA. So picture a pizza tracker, but for flag requests. So one of the constituent services that many congressional offices offer is sending American flags that were flown over the Capitol to constituents. They often order flags for important life events like birthdays, funerals, graduations, and military ceremonies. And so they therefore carry a lot of meaning, and they often are required by a certain date. The procedure for processing flag requests is different in the House and the Senate, but a tracker will solve a problem that exists in both chambers. The Senate uses a paper process where the flag request form is actually printed onto 5 different colors of paper, and then those different colors are manually transported with the flag between different support offices. So to determine where a flag is in the process, they have to physically sort through filing cabinets to see which color of paper the flag request is on, to know where it is in the process and what they have a record of. And then this is what the current flag portal looks like for member offices on the House side. And there's only 3 statuses currently available that staff assistants can see, which are pending approval, in process, and out for delivery. The problem is these different statuses, in process and out for delivery, they only encompass they encompass multiple different steps of the flag process across multiple different support offices. So constituents will often call a member and be frustrated to hear that the office can't give them a quick answer as to when they will receive their flag. Staff assistants are then spending a lot of time calling back and forth between different support offices, trying to figure out where the flag is. And then, of course, this is also frustrating for the support offices because they have a very full workload already, and they have to spend a lot of time fielding staff phone calls. So MSA has been working with Code for America on developing a prototype of a flag tracker that will show you where the flag is in the process. So here it is. You can click into an order just like you can now and still pull up all of the relevant information, including the flag size and type and the constituent contact information. But your home screen will still show you, instead of just a generic, in process, it'll show you exactly where the flag is in the process with 9 different statuses instead of the current 3. So the colors indicate where in the process it is, including which support offices it is within. So anything in red means it's with the office supply store, anything in white is with the architect of the Capitol, and blue is with the mailing services. I'm really excited to say that the Senate Sergeant of Arms announced back in January that they're building an advisory group to improve the flag ordering process, and they cited MSA in their background. So we're hoping that a digital flag tracker is a part of the new system that they're developing, and we're also hoping that this is something that can be adopted on the House side as well. This type of system would save time and energy for both Hill staff and for constituents, and it would also make it easier to collect data on where other pain points are within the flag process. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ananda. I love the collaboration with Code for America, and those of you that are from not in Congress, you probably didn't know that getting flags flown over the Capitol is a very big deal. It's a lot of logistical effort going on all the time, and it's great that somebody's focusing on it to modernize it. Next, we have Brian Overland. Come on up. Do you see your?
Yep. Thanks so much. Hi, everybody. My name is Brian Overland. I am CEO and co-founder of Prolegis. We are a nonpartisan, free-to-access builder of technology tools and publisher of original policy analysis. And I'm here to do a couple things, but first of all, if no one has done it already, welcome you officially to appropriations season. It's here. It's here. It's happening all day, every day. And for staffers and for folks on the constituent side, keeping track of what programs are being funded at what level, both historically and in the current moment, can be a real pain. So what we did is we took, using GPO legislative bill text data, we built an easy-to-use directory that basically takes all of the spending data from all the accounts and sub-accounts. We parse out all that data, we make it really easy to search so that you can see, just at a glance, how spending has evolved over time for a given sub-account. This is all leveraging legislative bill text data from the GPO. And let me just give you a quick look at how this works here. I'm just gonna pull up my account. And bear with me 1 second, please. No one please steal my password. That's okay, I'm gonna change it right after this. On, 1, 2, 3. All right, appropriations. I'm just gonna show you one quick example before I conclude here. Let's say you've got requests about school lunch programs. You can pull up easily the agriculture bill. Here it is. Search school lunch. Here it comes. This shows you spending in appropriations and appropriated amounts for the last 6 years. If you want to check and see where that request resided originally, you can just pull up the bill right here. And it zooms you, and this will take a second to load, it's a big bill. It'll zoom you right into the section of text. And again, this is, intended for everyone, in Congress working on appropes. And so we want to make this better. We want to enhance it with your help and suggestions, and make it applicable to more and more use cases through the appropriations season. I want to thank folks at the GPO for excellent bulk data that powers this, and for the opportunity to be here. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Next, AJ from over in the Senate. First of a couple presenters we have from the Senate.
Hi, so my name is A.G. Stewart. I'm actually the American Mathematical Society Congressional Fellow. That means I'm just here for a year checking it out. I'm a tourist, kind of, so to speak. So when I got into my office, I had to learn a lot. And one of the things that happened is I need to learn my portfolio rather quickly. And there's an overwhelming amount of legislative data that comes in. As of yesterday, there are over 11,000 bills that were introduced into Congress in the 117th. And as a staffer, it comes down to navigating maybe congress.gov, maybe Prolegis, maybe govtrack.us, but all of these resources can be a little bit clunky when you first come into the staff. And what you kind of want to do is you want to specialize the bills that you're looking at by your portfolio. So you want to have something where it's like, I just want to see all the bills that I care about that are coming through Congress. And so you think, hey, maybe I'll go to congress.gov and I'll click taxation because I deal with taxation. Well, the Finance Committee in the Senate deals with anything that has to do with taxes. So there's a tremendous amount of Medicare bills that are in there that probably are the health staffer, not the tax staffer, right? So the tags in congress.gov provide a little bit of a function, but they don't really specialize to what you want. So what I did was like, all right, I'm sick of this, I'm gonna do my own thing. So I basically would scrape the data from congress.gov, I got all the bills, and then I used natural language processing to search the bill text, and I also used the committee and the policy tags to score each bill according to different topics from a program called BERT Topic. And so then I basically have a score for each bill, and then now what I can do is I can use training data and say that these are the bills that should be in specific tranches of portfolios, and then basically cluster according to that training data, the scoring that I got. And what this would do is, what I'm imagining is that a staffer or a legislative director could do this for the whole, all of their staff, and they could basically set up a whole account, or a particular staffer could get something personalized to them. And then from there, you maybe get alerts or something like that. So right now, I definitely have a function that scores each bill into different categories. And then I also have an algorithm, basically a clustering algorithm, that will sort and tranche each bill into a specific category. I basically output it to a sheet. So that's all I do. I look at these sheets all day. So it'd be nice if there was a better interface for users to see that. Again, I did NPL instead of NLP. I always do that. So I think it's also a chance to create a natural language processing model for congressional bill texts. So I think that there's some proprietary text out there for legal documents, but it would be nice to have a model that's specifically for congressional bills that we have. You don't know how many stop words I have in my algorithm. So that's the idea. Thank you all, and that's it.
Thanks, AJ. Another great example of engineers in Congress as staffers. We got to get more of them. Next up, Ken Ward, presenting on the Congressional Digital side, the House Digital Service.
Hey everybody, I'm Ken. I'm the new director of our new House Digital Service. We're really excited about this initiative. There's been digital services in the UK Parliament. There's been United States Digital Service, 18F, which is the Digital Service Organization, state digital services, and local digital services. They all take on a little bit of their own flavor, so to speak. And so what we envision here in the House actually combines a lot of ideas that have been talked about here today. Fundamentally, we want to bring ideas and methodologies from the private sector here into our digital service in the House, where we can have a little bit of freedom and risk tolerance to experiment and iterate. We want to leverage design principles, like I love this design lab idea, human-centered design principles, modern development stacks, and ultimately rapidly prototype and deliver new products and services to member offices and committees. So how are we going to do that? Well, we're essentially building a product team. This is underway, hiring is underway, so myself and Sherman here in the crowd are two House Digital Service staffers today, but we're growing, and so later in the summer we'll have more teammates to talk about, but we're following a traditional product triad model for building this team out. We're hiring product manager, user experience designers, and software engineers, so that when we can go and talk to offices and committees as a product manager, similar to what the Modernization Committee is doing. What's your problem? How can we solve it? How do we measure it? How do we prioritize things? We want to leverage human-centered design, so we talk about the full experience and what is the user behavior, what are the pain points, and how can we deliver really exceptional experiences, and ultimately modern development stacks to build software. This design thinking methodology is pretty common. There's a number of opportunities here to collaborate with folks here in this room. First of all, there's endless amounts of research that we can do. We can do that in collaboration with outside groups. We can do that in collaboration with partners and other organizations, like in the clerk, which we do, in the Senate, which we do. We're going to hear from the Senate and some exciting collaboration we've done with them on the Quill product. But ultimately, staffers' time is like the most precious asset here. So we need to figure out how to work alongside and build services with staff, not just go away and build something and then deliver to them a year from now and maybe miss the mark. So that research and those insights are key. We want to diverge and come up with lots of great ideas, but to converge into specific problems, we really need that staff input. Another way we can collaborate with people in the room here is while we'll have some risk tolerance, the government is not an entity known for taking on big risks. So, Ananda's effort with the flag tracker is a great example of partnering with some outside organizations to deliver proof of concepts and do a lot of the heavy lifting to put a real service, a real prototype in front of somebody to validate ideas. So in any event, we're going to be starting discovery efforts this summer. Discovery leads to design, design leads to development, development leads to delivery of new services. So we're very excited, and thanks to many people in this room who were part of prototyping this service, who were part of advocating for this service, and we're looking forward to getting to work. Thanks.
Thanks, Ken. We are super excited about the House Digital Service. Next up is Casey, going to present on the Quill application.
Hello, everyone. My name is Casey. I'm a UX designer at the Senate Sergeant-at-Arms. I'm also the product owner of Quill. So member and committee staff need a way to share letters and get members to sign them. This typically meant that we sent interns around to each signer's office, and you usually had to print out a couple different versions, so just in case someone made a mistake, you had a backup. And if someone wanted to be added or someone wanted to be removed, you'd have to start the whole process over again. So as you can imagine, this could take days and weeks to get letters signed. So what we did was a small team at the Senate built Quill. We had an MVP ready in about 6 weeks. And then we partnered with staff to expand its features. And then later in the year, we partnered with the House CIO, or CAO, on a House pilot. And then more recently, we partnered with both committee and member staffs in both the House and Senate to expand it further. Let's see. So how does Quill save, or how does Quill help offices? First, it saves time, so days and weeks turn into minutes. Authors can really email and invite people to sign their letter instantly. It's no more running around. Text changes are summarized automatically for co-signers when they're ready. Authors can also sign on behalf of co-signers who's given them authorization. The other benefit is that it adds security and control over your members' signatures because offices can control which of their staff have access to Quill, as well as which staff can actually use the signature. So I'll just leave you with some quick stats here. We have nearly all members enrolled. There's been over 2,000 letters entered, and average letter has about 18 co-signers invited to sign it. So congressional staff can learn more by searching Quill on HouseNet and Webster, and it's available at no cost. So thank you.
Thank you, Casey, so much. I love Quill. It really has changed inside operations in House and Senate offices. It's one of the few things I love that it's internally built and successful in both chambers. Rarely do things cross between the different chambers. And I was one of those staffers many, many times, handed a huge stack with just random couple signatures. We'd have to, awful finding out whose signature is who, and then ordering them in the correct alphabetical order. It was just a logistical nightmare that would happen over and over and over again, and it's been solved by Quill. That's a wonderful example. Next up, we got David. David Tennant? Yes, great.
How's it going, guys? So I am here to take things in a different direction today. We got a lot of smart ledge people up here, but I'm a comms guy, so we're gonna go a little social. I don't know if you've heard about it, but Connect is a social networking platform for Capitol Hill staffers. It's based around coffees, events, and group messaging. For the past 3 years, I've been a staffer here on Capitol Hill, working as a digital director. I have now quit my job and I'm waiting tables to pay the bills, but we're pursuing entrepreneurship. So, overall, my last 3 years on the Hill, I've definitely noticed that staffers are master networkers. We know how to talk to people, we know how to build meaningful relationships, but we don't have the tools to do so. At the same time, I learned how antiquated our systems are for networking. So for the past 14 months, I've been developing the Connect app. So it's a networking app for Hill staffers, like I said. Over my time on the Hill, I've noticed how important interpersonal connections are, and like going out there, being vulnerable, hitting those cold emails, and learning how to connect with people to find friends, to make staffing connections, to find your next job. So I wanted to create a platform that was able to kind of consolidate all these efforts that are part of the networking experience that we're not seeing on the Hill right now. So I do that through a couple of things. One thing I always saw as an intern, I'm sure if anyone else here has been an intern, which I'm sure there are plenty, the struggle of cold emails, of awkward conversations, and just lots of rejection. It's weird. Coffees are a great way to do so, but they can be weird in the process and setting them up, and honestly, it's pretty hard to keep track of them. So I wanted to do something that made a big city feel small, not for me, but for those people that are currently going through the process of finding their next job, of just moving to DC, not knowing anybody like myself when I moved here. So I wanted to create something that was a solution that consolidates all these aspects. So Connect is centered around 3 aspects of networking that I see as being the key parts of Capitol Hill. First one is obviously getting coffees, and then we have attending events and group messaging. So Connect allows you to schedule coffees, it allows you to track upcoming coffees, send invites, and then once you get through that process of someone accepting an invite, you're able to track what's coming up next. And after you have that coffee, you can then see inside your app, track your past coffees, rate privately who you've gone coffee with to see how it went, and keep notes inside there of how that went. So we're able to digitally create something that used to be put in just a notebook and left in a drawer somewhere for years, like I do. So another staple of Capitol Hill to me is attending events. It's a great way for Capitol Hill staffers to meet each other, to meet people in the private sector as well. So we're giving opportunities for staffers to make those connections off the Hill and on the Hill. We're going to be hosting networking events ourselves to facilitate those connections, as well as using private industry to kind of merge that gap between the Hill. So we'll also be tracking all the events that you guys see on random listservs and emails. So we're adding that aspect too. And then last of all, we have groups, which is an idea for us to kind of promote some civil discourse, have some discussions, maybe about staffer pay, maybe about how to modernize Congress, because it's needed. So we're here to do that as well. We really want to create a space where we're defined by something different than just the RD next to our name. And talk about things that are important to us and characteristics that are special to us that define us beyond our political party. So I wanted to create a place to share these ideas. I think Congress is rooted in protocols, keeping things the same, and that's very important when it comes to the structure of Congress. But when it comes to technology, I think we have an opportunity to change how things are done and accept innovation to move on and move forward. So check out the Connect app, download in the App Store. Thank you.
Thanks so much, David. Joseph, coming up next, Congressional App Challenge.
All right. Hey, everybody. My name is Joe Alessi, and I'm the director of the Congressional App Challenge, which is the official STEM competition of the House of Representatives. The Congressional App Challenge's goal is to inspire American students to pursue a passion for STEM and create a robust domestic pipeline of future STEM talent. In the Congressional App Challenge, the House of Representatives has created the largest and most prestigious student coding competition in the world. This work is made possible by the over 1,000 congressional staffers who work in districts all across the country in all 50 states. Congress does this at a district level. Members host app challenges for students in their districts, and every member of Congress names a winner from their district. Last year, 340 members of the House of Representatives from all 50 states hosted. Thousands of students participated, and hundreds are currently being honored by their members of Congress. The competition has a huge impact on members as well, ensuring that all of Congress appreciates the importance of domestic STEM talent and for the future of not just Congress, but for our national future as well. Seeing the power of this from their student constituents is the best demonstration possible for Congress to see the power of technology to solve problems. So the best part of the Congressional App Challenge is House of Code, an event that honors every district winner here in Washington. We are proposing that this event, House of Code, is a chance to reflect on civic engagement at its finest. The most talented and diverse set of student coders in the country will be assembled here under the dome of the Capitol. They're optimistic, they're resourceful, and they're using their skills for good, an amazing model of civic engagement. Members have told students to code for Congress. It's one of our slogans. Let's go a step further and have them actually solve for Congress. So, let's take that inspiration and apply it to challenges that Congress is having with data. And let's do that specifically with the Congressional Wish List. Here's our ask. Congress recommend which item from the Congressional Wish List they'd like to see app challengers tackle in 2023. And we'll make it a reality. We'll have final collaboration between the students take place here under the Dome of the Capitol during House of Code 2023. Students can work collaboratively on a solution using official data sets and guidance from the House of Representatives to building a working solution that has roots in every district around the country. The competition is a reminder of the good that is possible through public service, and the incredible work of these young app challengers inspires Congress to never lose sight of what's possible, no matter your age, your skill set, or your background. Congress is inspiring a generation of American coders through the Congressional App Challenge. Now, they can help Congress solve some of their technological problems as well. Thank you guys very much for your time.
Thank you so much. Next up, John Roberts.
All right, Joseph, I'm going to spike your set there. I really appreciate it. And I think I want to talk a little bit more broadly about open innovation, like what the Congressional App Challenge and a lot of other programs that my team runs out of different executive agencies, and I think all of government has the ability to leverage more of. So I'm John Roberts. I work on open innovation. Many of you already know that open innovation has been used for centuries to find breakthroughs to intractable problems. In the federal context, use of prizes, crowdsourcing citizen science grand challenges has only grown since a broad authority was established in the 2010 Competes Act and in other agency-specific authorities. We know it works. Just to take an example of my team at Luminary Labs, we're a women-owned small business based in New York that's run a few dozen successful open innovation programs over the last 10 years, representing 40 million and counting in prizes. It's worked for everything from geospatial data collection for an intelligence agency, detecting opioids in the US mail for DHS, currently active NIH prize for bioelectronic therapeutics, and an ongoing series of Department of Ed challenges advancing innovation and equity in career and technical education. Beyond the prize itself, these programs have elevated the profile of problems that matter, drawn press attention, informed large-scale procurements, and attracted significant private dollars to accelerate really good ideas. So given all that, I often wonder why don't we use it more? Compared to SBIR, we're an order of magnitude less, let alone more traditional procurement mechanisms and contracts. So I think why we don't use it more comes down to how hard it is to really coordinate in the way we need to do this well. Even if you can line up the appropriations or the discretionary funding to make a prize happen, there is a big messy middle of design and execution that right now is distributed across a lot of different experts, individuals within agencies, small but mighty teams that we work with at GSA and NASA, and of course, contractors and partners with a lot of experience like me and my peers in the community. So how much as I like my job, I think that this ecosystem can do a heck of a lot more and achieve a lot more impact. So what is that actually going to take? I think bottom line, being practitioners of what we preach in the open innovation community, integrating and harmonizing data both around the inputs and the outcomes of open innovation, aligning this in a data.gov style accessible front end that draws on many of the ideas that have been shared so far today, everything from appropriations and legislative text that advances prizes and innovation, public content around prize results, and biannual agency reporting to Congress that is currently very underutilized but has some great data in it. So bringing all that together, organizing and opening up our open innovation, I think can maximize Congress's return on what I hope is growing investment in this important tool. The ability to see concretely how states and districts benefit and ultimately advance American competition a little bit faster than we would without open innovation. So thanks, come see me. I'm very open to feedback. Appreciate it.
Thank you, John, very much. Only a couple more of these. And next up is me. Mr. Hoyer mentioned that I was going to show the second app that we've made in the House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer's office. The first one that we've had around since 2015 is called Dome Watch. It's a very popular, successful way to closely follow the House floor. And the second one we made about a year ago, a little over a year ago, called Dome Directory. Now, this is just a memorization tool, as Mr. Hoyer told you, for memorizing members of Congress. It's available for free in the iOS and Android, although I believe the new version's not on Android yet. But it's also on the web, which is what you're looking at right now, which is directory.domewatch.us. And so it's a memorization tool for memorizing faces and committee memberships and major caucus memberships. Many people ask, why is the majority leader making an app like that? Well, the simple backstory is that in 2018, there was a good app that just like this, so we did not come up with the idea for this, that did a good job of this. And in 2018, we had a very large freshman class. It was very important that all of us quickly memorize all their faces and their committee assignments as soon as they received them. And there was a great outside app that we in the Majority Leader office told everyone about, including Capitol Police and press and everyone, and it went really well. Well, then fast forward 2 years, in 2020, we have another new class, and that app had gone defunct, and so everyone came to us and said, darn it, why doesn't this work, and why can't you find a solution? And we thought, well, we actually do have this data, and we keep track of this data very closely in the Majority Leader's office. Of course, all of our members are our constituents. They're the ones that elect us to leadership. So we have a full-time developer, and he said, I can make this pretty quick. It'll be fun. And it's a good dive for me to stay afresh of people like you that make congressional technology, to be able to get my hands dirty with the data and everything. So one thing we learned very quickly was the official sources of data, even new members, take many months. So please, clerk and everyone else, let's try to do that faster, even if they're unofficial in the future. Because our members needed it in November, right after the election. That's when we needed to memorize all the faces, not in February when the official lists were released. So we brute forced it with interns. That was fun. So one of the new changes in 2.0 is that which just launched, is that we're using the official bulk data instead of our brute force data. So thank you, GPO, and we switched over to and clerk and lots of other data. But so the app is very simple. You can go, and another thing we added was, instead of just being able to look at House or Senate, you can look at all the major caucuses and all the committees. I did like to say I'm one of the only ones with, I think, with good major caucus data, although Jonathan earlier looked like he had some very good major caucus data. A lot of people don't know the differences between the major biographical caucuses versus the litany of many other caucuses. But you can go to, the CHC here, and you can, well, I did not, they come up at random. I did not pick this picture to come up. And it's the simple memorization app. You just guess to yourself, well, do I know who this is or not? And then you click once and you see who it is, and you say, okay, yes, I was correct. I got that right. But a couple of things that we added contact information, and we added biography, which is these nice little short biographies that we get from the member guide. We also did have to brute force, because our office felt strongly that we still linked the official biographies. There's no master list of that, so we had to have interns work on that. But now we all have in one place, and we're going to release it to the public. We've got these great badges, which have all the major caucus and committee roles. And then another thing we added that's new is defining votes of this Congress. So this, of course, is subjective, but we have a point of view in the Majority Leader's office. So we picked Build Back Better and the Bipartisan Infrastructure Bill, which you can see, interestingly, was a nay vote here. The American Rescue Plan, and then also the second impeachment of Donald Trump, and then also the vote in the middle of the night after January 6th to overturn the election. So we just feel that those are defining votes, and so it's interesting to be able to see each of the members as you go through. So after you're done, I know that was AOC. So then you can just keep going, and that's how the app works. And my time is up, and I don't want to break my own rules. You can also, one other new thing is, we used to do the whole caucus, but you can now quiz yourself within individual decks and stuff like that. So great. Next up, you guys. Yeah, it's your old version though, because someone took the. Sorry, bear with me 1 second.
Hi, everyone. We are presenting our project called Legisno, and we're a couple of PhD students studying computer engineering and computer science.
So the problem we're addressing today is the fact that there are no efficient and user-friendly tools for searching through congressional data, and also there is no centralized platform for crowdsourced reporting of issues. So our solution consists of 3 components.
The first component is a chatbot that can respond to constituent queries about their representatives. The chatbot can get information about specific legislation, and also it's interactive, so it can record opinions and comments about upcoming legislation that are recorded from the constituents.
Next, we have a mobile app with a Waze-like interface that allows residents to report issues by placing a marker on the map along with a description. It also comes with a voice assistant for the visually impaired to perform the same actions.
And finally, for the administration side, we have a web dashboard that allows policymakers from both chambers to gather insights from all the crowdsourced data that we collect. And then we have an analytics interface that can integrate with other tools like Power BI, and we can also export this data as CSV files.
All right, now on to the demo. So this is our chatbot. So you can ask questions about bills. And I'm just going to fast forward through this. It can also summarize different bills. And it can also extract key information. For example, who are the sponsors of a certain bill? All right, next we have our mobile app. So this shows all the existing markers and you can add one on your own. Select and classify the type of issue you're reporting, add a description, and just hit submit. And the last component so this is the web dashboard for the Congress to view all those reports and view different analytics of the types of issues and the count, and keywords extracted from the reports to see which areas or issues need more attention. And there's a heat map on the Google Map showing areas where there are issues currently being reported. Lastly, we can export this data as a CSV file for further analysis using Excel or other tools out there.
All right, so that's our project. We use an NLP stack, and we're heavy on the machine learning side for getting legislative data into modern AI-based techniques for summarization as well as for entity extraction. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I love to see academics focused on congressional data and technology. Okay, we have one presenter left, Rachel with the Bipartisan Policy Center. Are you here? Yeah, thanks.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rachel Ori. I'm a senior policy analyst at the Bipartisan Policy Center's governance program. I'm joined by my colleague, Michael Thorning, associate director of the BPC governance program. So today we're just going to talk to you a little bit about some research we did on congressional scheduling conflicts and a potential solution we found that could reduce conflicts by as much as 86%. So we all know that members of Congress's schedules are chock full of meetings and obligations. They have an important job with a lot to do. But this becomes a problem when their schedules are so full that they're unable to fulfill their legislative duties. So to get a better sense of the problem, we took a deep dive into congressional scheduling conflicts since the 113th Congress. We found that overall, if you look at any given hearing, about 1 in 5 members present at that hearing will have another hearing they're supposed to be at the same time. At some hearings, more than 90% of members had another conflict. Overall, if we look at each Congress, there are about 10,000 scheduling conflicts per Congress, about 5,000 per year. So it's clearly a problem. Our solution was to use optimization modeling techniques to identify a committee schedule that would better distribute congressional committees between 3 scheduling blocks, optimized to reduce the total amount of conflicts. So what we did was we took the frequency of each committee's hearings, combined that with membership, with their overlap with other committees, to create basically a cost. What would the potential risk of conflicts be if you add this committee to slate A, B, or C? We then used a generalized reduced gradient algorithm to identify the distribution of committees between blocks that would minimize the total potential for conflict. What we found was that an optimized block schedule could reduce scheduling conflicts by as much as 86%. And with that, I'll pass it off to my colleague Michael to talk a little bit about the future of this.
Like all great collaborations of Rachel and I, it's 2/3 her, 1/3 me. So how did we get into this? About 3 years ago, when the House Modernization Committee was just getting started, both the committee and those of us in sort of the fixed Congress community were hearing constantly about this frustration that members, and of course the most important person in their office, the scheduler, were having with trying to get their members to multiple hearings or other meetings at once. And what Rachel just presented is sort of a product of our commitment to try to help solve that problem. This was a problem everyone seemed to be aware of and no one knew much about. The data simply wasn't out there. Rachel used her considerable skills to scrape that data that you just saw and that underlies her analysis, and I'm sure everyone can probably relate to how difficult that might be. Like any good think tank, BPC came up with a very rules-based solution. We said, well, the House should implement a block schedule. That, of course, is the way to fix this. And it really would. But one of the problems with rules-based solutions is you have to, one, get people to agree to adopt them, and two, you have to get people to actually follow them. So a rules-based solution might not be easily achieved, especially in the short term. And obviously relevant for today, a technology solution might actually help solve the problem faster. And the Modernization Committee recognized this in their recommendation, and the House Clerk recently put out a request for information about technology solutions to reduce committee scheduling conflicts. So this is sort of a great example of how data can be used to identify problems here in Congress, and technology can be used, hopefully, to solve them. Thank you so much. That wraps up our lightning round. Let's one more round of applause for all the presenters. We always get a little nervous when we devote a whole section of our day to just the suggestions from the crowd. But once again, you guys really came through, and I really appreciate all very interesting and topical presentations. So next, we're going to move on to the second phase, or sort of the main event. Can all the group leaders please come up on stage? Those of you that are here. So this next phase, sorry, one second. Well, I'll do that after I explain this. We're each going to go into 5 different breakout groups, and all of you can select whichever group you want. The idea is we're going to spend a little over an hour in each of these breakout rooms, and we're going to, it's the main event. We're going to have pre-populated some lists of sort of things to discuss. Some of them are current recommendations to the Modernization Committee. Thanks again, Yuri. One of them is building a staff directory across Congress and a lot of the various challenges that would create. So you all self-select. Take some time before you go to the breakout groups. Feel free to use a restroom. They're out past the entrance. The men's is to the right, women's is to the left. Right near the restrooms are 2 of the breakout rooms. So there's posters that label each of them. So there's 2 that are out there. There's one that's upstairs in the mezzanine right up here. I believe that's the one on casework and constituent services. And I believe the ones out in the rooms there are cybersecurity and modern hearings. So that's 3. And then the 2 that are in this room, and one in this corner and one in that corner, are legislative data and workflow and communicating with constituents. So it's very broad, it's very open-ended. Now, I said that there's lists of things that you can talk about. You can also come up with your own stuff to talk about. In the past, this has worked where maybe that whole breakout group will be one team working on one issue. Maybe they'll split into 2 or 3 different groups and work on 2 or 3 different issues. And we just, sometimes people are here that are, I know some of you are students, computer science students, and if you want to actually break out your laptops and code a little bit, that's happened in the past. But it's mostly idea hacking. It's mostly most productive when you have some technologists talking to congressional staffers, talking to institutional congressional staffers or outside advocates in the advocacy community, talking through the different bottlenecks and possible technical solutions. The group leaders will help you sort of just facilitate and keep moving along. And then after an hour, hour 15 or so, we'll all meet back here, and each group will come up on stage and tell everyone what you came up with. And after we get through that, then we get to walk down to a reception. So we have that to look forward to. Sorry we don't have food and drink in advance. I do believe there's water fountains out there somewhere. So actually, could I have each of the group leaders come and just introduce yourself and what group you're in?
Good afternoon. I'm Aubrey Wilson. I'm Director of Oversight for House Administration Republican staff, and I am running one of the group leaders who is working with constituent communications.
Hey everyone, Austin Agrella, Subcommittee Staff Director for the Cybersecurity Subcommittee on House Homeland. I'll be helping moderate the cybersecurity panel. Thanks.
Christian Hayner, Policy Director for the Committee on House Oversight for the minority staff, and I'll be doing the legislative data session.
Nanda Bhatia with the Modernization Committee, and I'll be doing constituent services and casework.
Good afternoon. I'm Georgina Cannon with the Committee on House Administration. I'm in Elections Council handling election technology and election security, and I'm doing the cybersecurity group.
Greetings and salutations, everyone. I am Ernestine Elaine Dawson, Digital Director and Advisor to the Chairman of the House Democratic Caucus, and I will be working with communicating with constituents.
Hey everybody, and welcome. My name is Jordan Wilson. I'm Director of Operations for Congressman Rob Whitman from Virginia, and I'll be with the Casework and Constituent Services Group.
Hi, everyone. I'm Maya Russell, and I'm the Digital Director for the House Democratic Policy and Communications Committee, or DPCC for short, and I'll be with Christian on the legislative portion.
Hey everyone, I'm Daniel Santa Cruz with the House Committee on Veterans Affairs, and I'll be doing the Modern Hearings breakout session.
Last, I'm Derek Harley, a Republican Staff Director at the Modernization Committee, and I'll be joining Daniel for the Modern Hearings session. So look forward to talking to you. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. So just go ahead and mingle and make it ready to a group shortly, but possibly also bathroom breaks or whatever. Thanks. We're gonna start heading back. Group upstairs, wanna come back down? First, I hope you all stick around and join us for a little food and drink. We're having a reception. Unfortunately, you can't be right here. It's a little bit down the hall in HVC 215, which is out to the left and then sort of to the right a little and then a left again, and you'll find it, and the whole group will walk down there at the end here. HVC 215. So join us after this. Next, we'll hear from each group. They'll come up and give us a presentation on what you heard. The other admin thing is exiting the building is a little tough because the doors that are close to the CVC are inaccessible. So you need to find your way back to the south door, which is the door that all of you that are non-staff entered. The easiest way to do that is, again, go out here and to the left and then sort of straight, and it'll take you to some other escalators. You go up to the top, and if you find 2 escalators in a row, you'll be in the crypt, which is in the main old Capitol building. And if you take a left, it'll take you to the south door. There are lots of Capitol Police all over the place that will be happy to point you in the direction if you ask for the south door to exit the building. That's the easiest thing, just ask police for help. All right, so which breakout group wants to go first? Don't all volunteer at once. Cybersecurity, Austin. All right, so it's up to each group if you want just the group leaders to come up and present, or if you have any super active members that also want to come and say something. But all right, cybersecurity.
Well, hey everyone, Austin, House Homeland. Just want to thank our team for the very productive conversation. So I'll run through the first half of what we did, then I'll turn it over to my co-leader to run through the second half. So the first that we came up with was a bug bounty program, such as something like we saw with Hack the Pentagon, do something with Hack the Capitol, or something related to just your typical VDP, vulnerability disclosure process to basically facilitate sort of a crowdsourced effort to improve security here at the Capitol. The second was continuing education for staff. So making sure that cybersecurity education, best practices, and hygiene isn't just something you do once a year as part of training, but is an ongoing sort of iterative process for people. And that can be done through emails, surprise emails that pop up, fake phishing emails that are actually from the IT folks or something like that. So just to test people's ability to stay secure and safe on the internet. And part of that would include maintaining metrics of what's happening so that you can shift with the threat landscape. If the threat landscape is tending towards phishing or bad websites or something like that, and you see staff disproportionately being affected by one or the other, then you can adapt and overcome. So those are the first 2 of the buckets that we came up with.
Thank you. Georgina Cannon, Committee on House Administration. So the other 2 buckets that we came up with, first was improving authentication when you're accessing House devices, whether it's physically here in your offices or at home, using multi-factor authentication with physical security keys, not just tokens. And the other thing that we talked about, major kind of bucket, was treating education for the general public in cybersecurity as a national security issue. So trying to close that gap, improving education at all levels throughout, grade school up through high school, and improving our cybersecurity workforce so that we can continue to compete. So I think that's a summary of our 4 kind of big bucket ideas. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Who wants to come next? Casework. All right, come on up. While they're walking up here, I remember the other admin thing I couldn't think of, posters. We bought too many of them. Everyone should take at least 5 home with them. We've got lots of rubber bands. You can roll them up and take some nice posters home with you. Casework and constituent services.
Hey, can everyone hear me? Thanks. I'm Annalise. This is Jonathan. We were from the Casework working group that was up in that atrium. Kind of hard to get to. So we kind of, for myself, I've worked in a series of tech nonprofits, and I learned a lot of interesting just kind of tweaks and wrinkles in the casework process from folks who are deep in like member offices, who are staffers. And one question that we started to ask ourselves is who sort of owns constituent data, and how can we be good stewards of that data? So one idea was how can we allow constituents who we help through casework to sort of self-determine what is done with their own data. One example is when members sort of transfer an office after they lose a race, they might transfer to a member from another party, or even if their district is redistricted, or even if that member dies, what happens to all the data of open cases that they have. So right now, the default option is if there's kind of a form, you can send all, some, or none of that data, and the default option is none. So how could we kind of rework the system or change some rules or change the defaults from opt-in to opt-out so that more data is shared, or that's the easiest option, whether by changing the way systems are integrated. There's all kinds of methods. The other piece was about kind of how can we gather more touch points, more places for constituents to give feedback about either success stories or ways the process could be improved. So going back to Biden's executive order in December about customer service, which we read as one about user experience. How can we improve the user experience of helping our constituents all across the country? Yeah, kind of just working in service of them as much as possible. And go ahead, Jonathan.
Awesome. Thank you. So quick introduction, Jonathan Finch. I'm a graduate student at Georgetown, where I also do research at the Beck Center for Social Impact and Innovation. And so kind of building on those points, we talked about, once you kind of sort out the question of data ownership, what can you then begin to do with it? And our team kind of articulated a bit of a spectrum. So just starting with, simply for internal office management, being able to develop a dashboard where you can clearly see and track where are we at across our cases? What are the cases that are taking longer to solve? What are the cases that are currently popping up? Perhaps in response to some external, event that drove, cases in a particular area. So that's the internal piece. We then also talked about, what if you could look at it cross offices? So if you were able to aggregate that data and look at across all member offices, what's the standard time to resolve a certain type of case? And so you then have data to give back to the member offices and say, how are we doing in terms of actually resolving cases across different types of issue areas? And then lastly, kind of, probably on the very extreme end, but if you made that data public, right, you could actually think about having kind of a heat map of the nation and seeing where is casework related to Medicaid eligibility popping up, where are the hotspots for that or hotspots for other issues. And so if you were to get to a world in which that data is made public, it becomes a pretty impactful both decision-making tool and also an accountability tool where public has data that they can access to actually see, these are the issues that are relevant to my area. What is my elected representative doing to address those issues? And so we spend a lot of time just talking about, once you get the data, there's just a lot of really cool things that you can do to make it useful, both kind of on the internal and external side of things. So that's what we got.
Thank you, guys. Who's coming next? Legislative data, all right, one of the big ones. All right, looks like a number of people are coming up. We do, if you look at the last 3 hackathons, there's 2 things that always come out of this. There's a big report that we spend a lot of time on, where we take a lot of notes from these, mostly this part right at the end, but also from the quick pitches and other things. And then we also have a highlights video, so you saw some videographers running around and photos. So watch for those. We'll send them out to the whole RSVP list. Next up.
Hi, I'm Rena. My Breakout group was trying to look into how we can help legislators better understand the bills they're working with, and we came up with 2 different ideas. One is kind of like this version of like comparing Amazon products, or if you know about levels.fyi, people comparing working at different tech companies, but instead of looking at like prices or ratings or like salary, you'd be being able to select a variety of different bills to compare, and then you can compare them across metadata or qualitative information, like is this bill, or is information in this bill in another bill already, what agency it's being referred to, its scale of bipartisanship, its funding level, is there a pay force, also maybe like history about the bill. That could be using open source contributions with moderation, so looking into like cultural context and political context behind bill text. And then a separate idea was this kind of Google Docs idea, where you're looking at version tracking of bill text, and you can look at aggregate data of what times people were making changes, even like specific changes to a sentence in the text. And then this could be also shared with the public to kind of better understand what's going into the drafting of the bills.
Hi, I'm Lisa LaPlante from the Government Publishing Office, and our group had a really great discussion around data modeling and data standards and use cases and user stories. And one of the things that we kind of found out was there's a lot of different use cases and user stories related to modeling legislative data, but there really isn't a formalized or centralized channel for folks that need to use that data or want to use that data to be able to convey those user stories. So quite a bit of discussion around that. We had some discussion around using a GitHub repository and GitHub issues to be able to say, as a, whatever your role is, I would like to be able to see a tag for or a data modeled for a certain type of use case for the purpose of. And really having that out there in the public to be able to, whether it be vote up or vote down, or to get feedback on those user stories, we see that there would be a lot of value in doing that. So had a really great discussion around data modeling and data standards.
Hey, my name is Kirsten, and my subgroup got to talk about the telephone directory and the eDear colleague system, so congressional data. One of the things that we discussed was to have a ledge branch-wide congressional directory, so that in our user stories would be such that if I'm in a member's office and I work on issue X, I want to find out everyone else that works on issue X. Or if I'm in a committee office and I need to find the subject matter expert over at the Congressional Budget Office, I can find them. Or if I'm the person who's responsible for printing things and getting things published in the committee, I can reach out to my friends at GPO. So those are the types of user stories we talked about. And for the folks who work on subject matter experts and have roles and responsibilities, we want to have a controlled vocabulary so that in the telephone directory, I can self-report, these are the things I work on, so that people can find me, whether it's a subject matter or whether it's a particular roles and responsibilities. So if I do flags, all the people who do flags can talk together. People who are in support offices like mine, they know how to find me if they want to talk about a certain thing. Then we switched over to talk about the eDear colleague system, and we have all sorts of wonderful ideas about how to improve the current system, but the key is to link that controlled list from the telephone directory with the eDear colleagues, and maybe with some of the data over at congress.gov, so then we can start identifying all the things that are in a particular issue area. So we generated a lot of ideas, and that's it. Thank you.
So we talked about modernizing the amendment submission process in committee. We're clearly very excited about it, as there are 3 of us up here. So,
hi everyone. So essentially, we were talking about how we could kind of streamline the amendment process, and it seems to me like it's fairly safe to say that like a little bit will go a long way. So essentially what we talked about is applying like the beginning steps of a data science model to the legislative process. So thinking about how we could, like ingestion and wrangling, taking all of these different amendments and put them into a database in a way that's structured. And just that in and of itself seems like it would be incredibly helpful for staff and for the legislative process.
I guess what we hope this would achieve is, some benefits for 3 key groups. One is, committee members and committee staff, making the amending process just a lot more streamlined and easier to wrangle. Second, being ledge counsel and taking, amended bills and translating them into rules prints that have to, conform to, certain language rules. And lastly, anyone observing a markup, either during that markup or after the fact, to better understand what the majority and minority opinions and ideas and votes were about the amendments on that, all using machine-readable data. That would be the ultimate vision.
so step-by-step guide, build an amendment form, populates to an Excel file, which then gets submitted with when it was submitted, who submitted, the long text assigned with a unique identifier. Ledge counsel and clerk have admin access, hit publish on the data. That populates to a lockdown WordPress site that members and staff have logins to. And then members and staff can see the schedule and amendments. And we know what's going on in a markup.
Awesome, great. Okay, who's next? We got hearings or communications? Let's do communications. All right, hearings, you're last. Whole team, let's go.
Alrighty, so we were the Communicating with Constituents group, and our discussion definitely started with us all getting on the same page about how much data congressional offices actually do lose because we don't use our CMS systems very well, or the limitations of the CMS system. And so I'm going to kick us off by kind of identifying the main problems that we identified, and then I'm going to pass it over to the team to talk about the solutions. And so the biggest problems that we kind of pulled out was that we get a lot of data in from the constituents, but actually using that to re-communicate with the constituents is something where we're falling short. And then with that too, the idea that on the staff side, we don't have the staff to fix that problem. And so even if we kind of had the tools, we also need tools that definitely would make it either streamlined or automated. And so that's the first big kind of bucket that we identified as an issue. The second one is that constituents' communication types that are preferred are changing. The kind of standard right now is that regardless of how you contact your congressperson, you're going to get a form letter back that kind of took multiple weeks to develop in-house. And so does that satisfy the constituent? Or would there be some way to kind of make the communication more streamlined, better for younger audiences, as well as still communicating with those older audiences in the way that they prefer as well? The last one is that I guess there's 2 more, was that there's really good important news that members want to communicate to their constituents, but they can't because of the opt-in system, and unless you're opt-in to the newsletter, it's not communicated back out. And then the last one is that CMSs do take some time to develop, and maybe there's tools that could be connected to the CMSs to kind of have this be a constantly innovative system versus us being locked into what we adopted, decades ago. And so with that, I'll pass it off to our first solution.
So hi everyone. Sorry, the board is kind of small, but this is kind of a diagram of our first solution. So this essentially shows us all the different ways that constituents can communicate with their representative. So this is a mix of calling, text messaging, various social media platforms like Facebook, Twitter, emailing, and even things like snail mail. So what we kind of discovered was no matter what the platform is, the content of the message is what's important. So what we are proposing is a unified communications platform / bot, which is able to ingest all this data in and then pass this data into 2 forked streams. The first stream goes to the CMS system, which is already in place, and to a database of messages. And the second one goes into an NLP cloud. So what this does is essentially does natural language processing on the incoming data and tags and summarizes the incoming constituent messages to the representative. And then after this, it stores it back into the CMS. So in the CMS, the database then has a mapping of the raw data to the tag data or to the information that has been processed by NLP. And using this data, then the representative can get very useful, actionable insights, and they can take it off and start communicating back to the constituents in a more efficient and low latency manner.
Another issue we discussed was an application for the geomapping tool that we saw earlier during the presentation. So it was discussed in our group that constituents may not always know how federal dollars are spent in their district. For something like a large spending bill like the American Rescue Plan, you'd be able to go to your member's website and you'd have access to a map, and there'd be tags for geolocations for where that money was spent in your district. And then using that same sort of idea for community funding grants, so people would be able to see specifically where federal dollars go to help them in their district.
Okay, so one thing that we looked at to model this system is what I use all the time, which is Greenhouse. I'm a recruiter in tech, and it's a similar concept. There's a lot of information coming in from a lot of sources, a lot of inputs, a lot of different people using it. So it is possible. And if we take a user persona approach, again, borrowing from tech, especially looking at, a simple message like text messaging, you could look at and respond by issue area. You could also then create response guides according to who your target is. So you could look generationally and say, okay, we know that Gen X likes to respond, likes to hear from us very quickly, and so, okay, those get responded to within 30 minutes. Just one example of the things you could do if you applied some user persona, user data to the communications.
Any last ads? Cover everything? Perfect. So that was constituent communications.
Thank you very much. Last but not least, Modern Hearing. Come on up.
So hey everyone, we had the breakout session on modern hearings. And so the big question we started off with was, how do we blend the desire for members to be in person with just listening to people across the country who normally wouldn't be able to fly to Washington? And so that was the big question we started off with. So one of our recommendations was to have a video first hearing room where it would be set up for video conferences for congressional hearings and proceedings. We also, based on the nature of some of the select committees and some of the other committees, we also suggested having a scheduling system for some of the bigger hearing rooms, so that way more of the committees would be able to have a chance to rotate through and have a setup that's conducive to more productive and engaging conversation rather than just the standard 5 minutes of testimony and the 5 minutes of questioning. Another thing we talked about was this centralized site that allows for all the committee pages and all the committee streams to be focused into one microsite, and that would in turn allow for more people to follow along, and it would be and increase civic education, and it would be great for like school kids who are in their government classes or their civics classes to follow along with congressional hearings in one centralized place and really understand how a bill gets introduced and then gets passed out of the House and then eventually signed into law. Another thing we also talked about was using this site for civic engagement and how different members can use their platform on the committee to engage their citizens and engage them to invite their citizens to come testify before the committee or encourage other people with compelling stories to really to share their stories and how what the work that we're doing here in Congress impacts them on the local level. So those were the three big things that we kind of talked about to modernize how committees are run and also to let the people know what exactly we do on the committee level to make sure that bills and legislation are moving forward.
Thanks, everyone. That's a wrap. If a couple staffers who know how to get to 2:15 want to take some of the early groups, I'm going to be at least 5 minutes, but I'll see you all down there. Thanks, everyone, for coming. Thanks again. Everyone online on the streams, have a good one.